For those of you who have been listening to my content, you know that I do not support cash reparations for slavery. The only reparation that I want is sovereign land. This was Abraham Lincoln's position. Abraham Lincoln did not want the descendants of slaves to continue being exploited under this capitalistic system. His goal was to give slaves and their descendants sovereign territory. He did not believe that blacks would ever be happy unless they had the right to self-govern. Clearly, he was right. In the law, the preferred legal remedy are monetary damages. However, monetary damages are inadequate when a plaintiff has suffered a continuous and irreparable injury. In those cases, courts prefer to award either injunctive or declaratory relief. This is the case with slavery. The damages caused by slavery are incalculable. There is no amount of monetary compensation which will ever make the descendants of slaves whole. No matter how much monetary compensation descendants of slaves are given, we will never be happy without the right to self-govern. We will continue to be oppressed under an unjust system. The proper remedy for slavery is freedom. Without sovereignty, the descendants of slaves are not truly free. The descendants of slaves are still subjugated under a democratic system in which blacks are in a minority. No matter how much the dominant society pays descendants of slaves, blacks can never truly be happy without the right to self-determination. When blacks accept a cash payout, they are in fact putting a monetary value to the suffering, brutality, and genocide of their ancestors. How much is that really worth? Is it worth $10,000? Is it worth $20,000? What the Black community does not realize is that by accepting this money, what they would be doing is absolving the government for its crimes against humanity. It would be no different than accepting a cash payout for the molestation of children. There needs to be a material consequence for slavery, and a cash payout is insufficient. The misleaders of the Black community know that there is no amount of financial compensation which will adequately compensate the descendants of slaves. However, they still want a cash payout so that they may siphon the money for themselves. The sovereign is the true master of all private property. Any money paid to the Black community will be completely squandered and will end up back in the hands of the system within a 2-year period. We'll have nothing to show for it. We will be back to square one and still stuck under this oppressive system. For these reasons, I do not support cash reparations. I have already done content explaining that paper money is not real wealth. I have also explained Aristotle's view on how money chasing enslaves men to an invisible master. However, I realize that many of you still want cash reparations no matter what I say. You're going to accept a cash payout and your children will still be enslaved. I think you are extremely misguided. Although I don't support cash reparations, I am nevertheless going to explain how to get them. The first thing you need to acknowledge is that under democracy, it is majority rules. America is not a true democracy. It is a Republican form of government, but is nevertheless being run as a democracy. Given the majoritarian nature of democracies, those who are in a majority position are rigged to always win. Democracy is a numbers game. In a true democracy, those who are in the majority have the inherent right to trample over the rights of minorities. White supremacy is just majority supremacy. In a rare case in which blacks have a majority, you get the same result. In South Africa, where blacks have a majority, they use their majority privilege to disenfranchise white farmers. The forming of racial factions is a natural consequence of democracy. That's how democracy works. In a majoritarian system, the most effective way for minorities to exert political power is by forming factions. Factions don't necessarily have to be on the basis of race. They can also be on the basis of religion, gender, etc. However, race is usually the default faction simply because races are discrete, insular, and readily identifiable. To my knowledge, racism only exists in democratic societies. Without a need for a majority, racism would serve no purpose. Once you form a faction, the second step is divide and conquer. Reparations are not in the rational self-interest of the white majority. With that being said, it is not a complete barrier because voters are not rational actors. In the art of persuasion, there are three primary tools, which are the ethos, which is an appeal to ethics, the pathos, which is an appeal to emotion, and the logos, which is an appeal to logic. The most effective approach is going to be an appeal to emotion. Voters can be manipulated into voting against their rational self-interest based on manufactured consent. In order to get the white majority to support reparations, you're going to need a well-funded propaganda machine. Blacks should not be the face of this propaganda machine. Blacks should step aside and hire whites to be their spokesmen, just as Republicans have recruited the likes of Candace Owens and Jesse Lee Peterson to be their mouthpieces. There have been many discussions about the weaponization of anti-Semitism against those who oppose Zionism. I actually don't have a problem with it. Political wars are not won just with brute force, but require rigorous propaganda machines. Zionists have been very effective at getting their message across and silencing dissent. The Black community should hire someone like Alan Dershowitz or Rabbi Shmuley to teach them how to do the same thing. The Black community also needs a new word which evokes a comparable measure of emotional outcry as the word anti-Semitism, which can be weaponized to make demands against the state. I have given this issue a great deal of thought. I think we should stop using the word Black altogether. Homo sapiens originated in Africa. As such, those who oppose policies which benefit the Black community are not anti-Black, they are anti the original man. The colloquial name for the original man is Adam. Those who are anti-Black are therefore anti-Adam. The word that I have come up with is anti-Adamic. Remove the word Black from your vernacular. Call yourselves Adams. Repetition is the key to all propaganda machines. Every time someone disagrees with you, you should bring up slavery and call them anti-Adamic. I would even make it a religious issue and convince Christians that they have a moral duty to support the children of Adam. I would also find a way to conflate anti-Adamitism with anti-Semitism. I would just keep talking about slavery and the Holocaust in order to confuse voters and back politicians into a wall so they would have no choice but to support reparations. Once I got that money, I would create a Black version of AIPAC, which would use that money to bribe more politicians and fund even more propaganda machines. I would create more movies about slavery, slave museums, and accuse anyone who refused to write blank checks to the Black AIPAC of being anti-Adamic. Again, this is what I would do if I actually supported cash reparations, which I do not. Obviously, the kinks need to be worked out. Suffice it to say, you're not going to get reparations by making appeals to logic. It is not in a white majority's rational self-interest to support reparations. However, American voters are morons, both white and Black. Even if you told them what you were doing, they still wouldn't believe you. I don't think there is anything sinister about what I am suggesting. The American people are not interested in the fine details of sausage making. They just want the finished product. If you want the majority of Americans to support cash reparations, it has to be based on manufactured consent, just like everything else.